Socialist Fulcrum, January 1970, Reforms by Bill Pritchard. Socialists are often accused of being opposed to reforms, social legislation designed to ameliorate some more or less intolerable situation, Medicare, Social Security, etc. How valid is this accusation? The companion parties of socialism do not oppose reforms per se any more than they advocate them. Socialists do not support or agitate for them precisely on the grounds upon which they are ostensibly presented, for they do not cure the ills to which they are addressed. Socialists contend further that the interest of the ruling powers lies in attracting votes for various political programs. Witness the reforms or promises offered by the politicos in an election year. They are the necessary policy of governments seeking a broader base of support in their efforts to maintain a sufficient degree of viability in this capitalist system. To keep order in a social system whose nature is to engender disorder, to maintain an unstable equilibrium in a system continually facing crises, and in times of great stress, the offering of reforms to a restless and dissatisfied populace helps to provide a breathing spell to a badly harassed government. The Roosevelt reforms of the New Deal, immediately following the Great Depression, were instituted not only as a sop to the enraged dispossessed, but to rebuild and reinforce a sagging business economy and fractured financial structure. They succeeded only to a very limited degree, as a worried mother tries to appease a howling infant by placing a pacifier in the child's mouth and sometimes sweetens it by coating it with syrup. So these reforms were offered with promises to do away with fear, that of the dispossessed and of those also who own and control. But they did nothing whatever to help resolve the basic contradictions in the economic system. The gap between the haves and the have-nots remained and even widened, and the economy was saved only by the outbreak of war. This war basis has continued throughout the ensuing peace years. Consider also two outstanding reforms of the past few years, the Alianza para Progreso and the War on Poverty. The former is now dying of inanition, and the latter never succeeded in getting off the ground. The Alliance for Progress was undertaken to underwrite the good neighbor policy to fasten Latin America to the chariot of United States imperialism, so that the countries to be helped might become suppliers of raw materials and sources of capital accumulation. The denizens of the slums of Peru, Guatemala, Brazil, even still wallow in their unrelieved poverty, and any great protest on their part is taken care of by dictatorial rulers, aided and abetted by the CIA and the Green Berets. Meantime, here at home, the increasing poverty and hopelessness of the ghettos of our large cities gives lie to the Great Society and its war on poverty. And that great reform, which one writer says is daintily referred to as urban renewal, does not even begin to touch the fringe of the inhabitants, yet capitalism cannot reform it. It may, however, destroy it, for the introduction of more sophisticated weaponry and a National Guard specially trained in riot control is now suggested as the answer, an increasing voiced response to the chaos and disorders of the moment. This now seems to be the only response of the selfish egotism of a ruling clique. A half-century of reforms, which do not reform, leaves this society more affluent in the upper levels and more poverty-stricken in the lower. The fewer rich become richer and the increasing many poorer. Despite growth in the gross national product, despite an apparent rise in the general standard of living for some, the gap remains and widens. While socialists conclude that capitalism cannot be genuinely reformed in the interest of the whole of society, socialists conclude also that it can be superseded by a better, higher social order. It is to this end, that of changing the world, we direct our efforts. It once was asked of this writer at a public meeting, how would you socialists suggest, right now, organizing production? To which I replied, production is already organized. There is no problem in that area. There is no anarchy in production today. Anarchy appears when the products reach the market. So production, we suggest, would be carried on as it is now, but with the other fellow, the capitalist owner, out of the picture. But there being no problem in production, only in distribution, these important changes would occur. One, distribution of goods and services instead of exchange, thus use instead of profit. Two, administration of things instead of government of people. Three, a complete social body, not one divided into rulers and ruled. Four, an entire economy administered democratically in the interest of the entire community. In closing, permit this observation: any socialist with a correct reading of Marx and knowledge gained from his own researches into history knows that societies have passed through various periods with different social formulations, but ever possessing rulers and ruled, until today mankind faces another eternal order, capitalism. This present order, despite its cruelties and oppressions, represented social advance, and in its early stages, compared to its antecedents, was liberal and progressive. It is no more eternal than feudalism or chattel slavery. Its increasing and continual crises indicate its time of dissolution, as it was with previous social orders, where wealth accumulates and men decay. Growing affluence above among the few, abysmal poverty below the lot of the many, chaos abounds and confusion reigns, crime in the streets and warfare abroad. These and one thing and one other distressing items are featured daily in the news media and presently exercise more and more minds in the populace. And the politicians cry reform, law and order, etc., etc., and the pity is that so many are thereby fooled. When socialists say capitalism cannot be reformed in the interests of the majority, but it can be abolished, we speak the language of history. Socialists have learned from a study of history that no society ever sets itself the task of dealing with any situation or problem without that society having first developed the necessary and sufficient conditions, or at least perceived those conditions in process of emergency. Nor can any society be dissolved and replaced by a higher one until it has developed all those forces requisite for its replacement. These forces are now abundantly evident. Ever more apparent is the high technological perfection in modern society, automation, which does not come about automatically. It is often restrained because of the influence of various vested interests. Also seen is a productive apparatus capable of producing more than a sufficiency for all. The age-long problem facing man, production, has been solved. Poverty, chaos, war, and social strife can be eliminated by doing away with the root causes of these horrors. This is our objective, to abolish capitalism, not vainly attempt to reform it. Think and think again, and thinking aright, join us in this great and only meaningful task,